What's going on, guys? So I know I'm a little late on this one, but I finally got around to watching the Dr. Robert Malone interview on the Joe Rogan Podcast. And to be honest, I'm a little disappointed because I was expecting some big bombshells because this guy has been taken off, every major social media. And I was expecting like some big bombshells. But to be honest, he was just saying stuff that a lot of people have been saying, that a lot of people have kind of been able to connect the dots on themselves. So nothing really crazy here, which is kind of worrying to me because why did he get deplatformed and not all the other people saying the exact same thing? So we'll get to that later on in the video. But if you're not familiar with Dr. Robert Malone, he has had a career in developing various things attached to the mRNA vaccine. There's a lot of debate and a lot of people trying to debunk him as the inventor of the mRNA vaccine. I don't know the specifics of the technology, but apparently he invented some part of the mRNA vaccine. But it's kind of like asking who invented the iPhone when it's like hundreds of people contributed to this thing. So he's been developing these kinds of vaccines his entire life and is obviously an expert on the subject, or at least should be considered an expert on the subject. I think that's a conservative viewpoint. So anyway, fast forwarding to me actually watching this thing. So I was watching a YouTube ripped version, and it actually got taken down on YouTube for a community guideline strike. I accidentally closed out of it and went to pull it back up with Control-Shift-T, and it was removed, taken down for a community guideline strike. Now, there was a lot of people saying that YouTube was censoring this, and I just assumed it was due to Joe Rogan's Spotify exclusivity deal, where Spotify owns his podcast for however many years, exclusively on that platform only, and I thought it was a copyright thing that was getting it removed, not YouTube censoring it. But in fact, it was probably a little bit of both. It was probably both copyright and YouTube censoring it, because the rip that I was watching did get pulled for a community guidelines violation. So yes, it was indeed censored. Now, based off of what I've been reading, apparently it was censored due to Dr. Robert Malone's quote on mass formation psychosis, where he compared essentially the brainwashing of Nazi Germany to what's happening with COVID. It kind of drew some similarities there, and to be honest, it's a pretty decent comparison on both sides of the aisle. Not just the pro-COVID lockdown people, but on both sides. You've seen a lot of crazy people come out with like the 5G bullshit and turning the frogs gay, and then you have people on the complete other side with the eternal lockdowns. God bless Pfizer. 10 more boosters and we can get over with this. Like, it's very polarizing, and he kind of made a comparison to Nazi Germany, how Nazi Germany it's a pretty well-educated, functioning society, a lot of technology, and it wasn't exactly like a war zone before Hitler came and kind of slowly boiled that frog into complete madness. So I think that, to be honest, was a pretty apt comparison, but YouTube did not think so. So, this guy, clearly an expert. I mean, if this guy is not considered an expert, I mean, who is? I mean, he literally worked on the vaccine, that delivers this, COVID vaccine. Like, I mean, I don't know. Who is an expert if this guy isn't? So, it got me wondering, like, why is this guy deplatformed when everyone else that's been saying similar things isn't? And I kind of came to the conclusion that this guy was deplatformed because he's an expert. If nobody else is getting it, but the one expert that is going against the grain, I think it's fucked up. I mean, I honestly think they deplatformed him because he is a dissenting scientist and because he is the expert that people can point to. Now, my stance on it is that I don't think it's realistic for anybody to be some all-knowing expert and not get anything wrong. In fact, I was very forgiving, especially early on in the pandemic, where, when the CDC and the WHO just got stuff blatantly wrong, like complete flip-flop on everything. Like every other day they were flip-flopping on stuff. And to be honest, I understand. It's a brand new thing. Nobody really knows what's going on. It's all educated guesses. My problem comes in is when they are sitting on a high horse saying that you can't question them and you should only listen to them, and specifically them and only them, and anybody that questions them is a heretic and must be silenced. And then they turn out to be wrong. It's really hard to get behind that. So I find it hilarious that Twitter Twitter has fact-checked a guy who has spent his entire career working on these mRNA vaccines. Now, maybe he's wrong, but who is fact-checking this guy? Some purple-haired, 300-pound woman at Twitter HQ? Seriously, who is fact-checking? Do they have an mRNA expert at Twitter staff that they've hired? No, they just don't like what the guy is saying and have kicked him off. That's exactly what it is. Now, again, this guy can be wrong. He could totally be wrong, which is fine. I think it's okay for people to be allowed to be wrong because the mainstream media has been constantly wrong. All of the experts have been constantly wrong. And again, I'm kind of forgiving of that. It's hard, I'm not expecting a Nostradamus situation here, but they have not been deplatformed. They have not seen any of the same criticism. It is a double standard to say the least. So, it appears that every single actual doctor and actual expert that disagrees with the narrative, even slightly disagrees with the narrative, is invalidated as a loony, as a crazy person. So this entirely invalidates the do some research argument. I fucking can't stand when people in the comments are like, do some research, or on Reddit, like, why don't you just do a little bit of research? Well, it doesn't matter, because these people that have spent their entire lives literally doing research on this exact thing, their opinion is void. It doesn't matter. You can't win. You can't win if you dissent even slightly. So a lot of arguments have been saying, like, you should be able to at least discuss COVID policy if you don't have a PhD. I watched a video by, who's the repair guy on YouTube, that the Right to Repair guy that repairs phones and laptops and stuff. I hate that I can't remember his name, but he had a video where he's like, you should be able to discuss things that affect your life even if you don't have a PhD. Well, ironically, this guy has a PhD, and that's still not enough. Doesn't matter. So, it's crazy because if you disagree slightly, like even slightly with the plan a little bit, they will paint you into a corner and brand you something that you aren't. This Dr. Malone guy took the vaccine, is for people getting the vaccine, and it doesn't think the vaccine is at all a bad idea, yet he is deemed an anti-vaxxer. And I, in my own comments section, had the exact same thing happen to me. My stance is that the whole COVID shots, all the boosters, all that stuff should be viewed exactly the same way as a seasonal flu shot. Optional, you can get it, great. Maybe it helps you out and not getting sick. But this COVID thing is very similar to the flu in that it's constantly mutating, and it's something that realistically, if you want to have some protection from it, you're going to have to constantly stay up to date on it. So I think it should be treated the exact same way as the seasonal flu shot. Do I think getting the vaccine will turn the frogs gay or any of these other ridiculous shit? No, I'm fine. Go get the vaccine. I will eventually get the vaccine when I have to leave the country because I have to. And guess what? I'll probably be fine. Yet I am called an anti-vaxxer despite the fact that I don't care if you get the vaccine. It's crazy. So COVID has become a very political issue. When really this is kind of like a medical issue. You wouldn't think there'd be a right-left thing here. But I think it's become a right-left thing because of the deplatforming and the censorship, which is a very sensitive thing for conservatives, because all of the people that get deplatformed, for the most part, are on the conservative side of the aisle. So when various scientists and doctors are getting deplatformed, naturally the conservatives are going to come to their side and be like, this is kind of fucked up, right? Like this happened to us. This has been happening to us. And the more conservative-minded people are very much, very, very pro freedom of speech. So much so that they are in the camp of hate speech isn't real. Let people say the most outrageous, offensive, and unpopular things, so that real freedom of speech is upheld. Like, you need people, and I'm in this camp too. I'm in the camp that we need people to push the absolute boundaries of what you can say so that us normal people can talk and have discourse. I remember, not to go on a fucking cool story, bro, here, but had a friend when I was a kid. Had an older, one of my brother's friends was in the military. He died. Westboro Baptist Church protested his funeral because, they called him like a fucking baby killer or whatever. They protested his funeral. And even as a kid, I understood the concept of, we need these assholes to exist so the normal people can't be questioned and silenced. So and I think that's a mentality thing. I don't think there's the right-left thing. I don't think there's any real compromise when there's a mentality of that is so different. It's just a completely different way of thinking. The same thing kind of goes with guns. That's just a mentality thing. That's not even there's not really no statistic or fucking policy is going to change the mentality. And anybody that has wrong or controversial opinions is deemed dangerous, which is crazy. Like if you say something crazy, you are if you are anti anti anything about the mainstream media of the COVID policy, you are deemed dangerous and are liable to be deplatformed. However, the Taliban, that's right, the actual Taliban terrorists have Twitter accounts. You think I'm making this up? You're going to Google it right now. Yes, the Taliban are allowed to be on Twitter. But, this Dr. Malone guy is too dangerous to be left on Twitter. It's absolutely outrageous. And why this is so bad is because when you silence the reasonable critics, like this Dr. Robert Malone guy, everything he said was pretty reasonable. He's just like, look, the way the system is set up with this vaccine, it's incentives. Everything is about incentives. You have to set up your systems in everything to be incentivized for good behavior. Otherwise, eventually, you will not get that good behavior. And the way it is right now, the government is scratching the back of Big Pharma, and Big Pharma is scratching the back of government. And you have all of these people that are justifying their existence, getting all this sweet, juicy taxpayer money to never have this thing end. Like, there is no reason why they should have to, stop doing what they're doing. Everybody involved is making a boatload of taxpayer dollars. And that's kind of what he's talking about. Like, of course Pfizer wants there to be 15 fucking booster shots. Look at their stock in the last 5 years. I mean, come on, man. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that there's perverse incentives here. And the problem is that when you deplatform the reasonable critics, then the critics of COVID are naturally going to turn to the extreme, 5G, chips in your arm, the frogs turn you gay critics. So they are creating zealots on the other side of the argument and creating martyrs out of people. So it's really dumb. It's really dumb. Anyway, if you haven't seen the Dr. Robert Malone interview on the Joe Rogan podcast, check it out. If you watch my videos, he literally hasn't really said much that I haven't said. The fact that he was deplatformed and quote-unquote fact-checked by people that obviously aren't as qualified as he is, it is honestly scary. He was deplatformed and censored because he was an expert that was dissenting. That is the scariest thing. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one.